Hello, my name is Łukasz Stolarski, and I'd like to talk about the corpus that I've created recently. Before I begin describing the corpus, let me tell you that you should make sure that you're using the latest version of any of the major browsers. So you can use either Google Chrome, Mozilla Firefox, Opera, Microsoft Edge, but it should be updated. This is important because let me show you what happens when you use an older version of, let's say, Firefox. Which has not been updated for longer than 2 or 3 years. As you see, the layout looks different and various parts of the website are just mixed up. It doesn't look the way it should. So once again, to avoid problems with the display, make sure your browser is updated. The corpus is called Phonetic Corpus of Audiobooks. It is based on audiobooks obtained from the site called LibriVox.org, which is a website storing free audiobooks recorded by volunteers. And you can find there over 12,000 finished projects, most of which are in English actually. The corpus uses 104 audiobooks, which in terms of number of hours boils down to over 1,100 hours. And the corresponding text of novels were taken from the official website of Project Gutenberg, which stores over 58,000 free ebooks. And by the way, these 104 ebooks contain over 10 million word tokens, and I guess this is a useful statistic for comparing the size of this corpus to other corpora available online. So it's over 10 million word tokens. The audiobooks were aligned with these texts using specialized software, and you may read about this in the documentation section. The alignment is broadly speaking on the sentence level, although using the word sentence is a simplification. In dialogues, characters' utterances are frequently interrupted by narrator's comments, like in this case. So in some examples, the alignment is at the level slightly lower than the orthographic sentence. Let's go to the main page now. And as you see, this site is still in the development stage, and you should expect some glitches, but overall, I think it is mature enough to be used for basic research purposes. And obviously, corrections, improvements, and new features will be added in the future. So, like in basically any other language corpus, you may look for individual words and phrases. Let's try the word beautiful. Now you can see the concordance for the word beautiful. Let's try beautiful woman. And again, you can see the concordance for beautiful woman. By the way, punctuation marks and capital letters are basically disregarded. So you could try spelling this with a capital letter and then finishing with a full stop, but the results will be exactly the same. There are some exceptions to this, but I'll talk about them later. So far, all this functionality is rather standard, but the corpus is special in that it allows you to listen to actual fragments in the audiobooks. And here to the right, you can see these play buttons. When you click on any of them, a new window should open. And by the way, I have used this corpus on my computer before, so the browser remembers the settings for this website. But when you visit it for the first time and click any of these play buttons, you may have to allow pop-up windows to appear. I'm not certain about Google Chrome, but something like this will happen in Firefox. So just allow pop-ups to appear for this site. So when you click the play button for any of these examples, a new window will open and the corresponding part of the audiobook will be played. So let's try the first one.
When a very beautiful woman thanks you humbly for something you have not yet given her, there is only one thing for a gentleman to do.
So you can listen to any of these texts, and you can also download the recording by right-clicking and choosing Save Page As. But instead of doing that, you could download the recording directly from the corpus interface using the download button. So let's try it for the first example, and this time let's try downloading it directly. Okay, now you can listen
When
to the
a very
recording.
beautiful woman thanks you humbly for something you have not yet given her, there is only one thing for a gentleman to do.
Now you can listen to the recording from the file which is on your computer. And the major aim of this corpus is actually for the user to use files downloaded in this way in any speech analysis software such as Praat. And now that you have a given file, you can analyze the exact part in the file that you're interested in. And you may ask at this stage whether it wouldn't be possible to have word level alignment instead of sentence level. Sure, it is possible. I'll think about this in the future, but for now you can just download whole sentences and narrow down your analysis only to the parts you're interested in. Now let me explain what these controls are. In some cases, the forced alignment software I used is not exact, and some parts at the beginning or end of a given recording are missing. Let's listen to this second example.
For, after all, he had been no more gallant than was customary from a prince and a gentleman to a beautiful woman.
Well, as you've just heard, the recording finished a few milliseconds before the reader finished reading the very expression beautiful woman. And in this case, this probably matters because we were looking for this expression. What we can do now is to elongate the audio fragment by, let's say, 1 second to the right, meaning 1 second will be added to the end of the excerpt. Let's listen to it again now.
For, after all, he had been no more gallant than was customary from a prince and a gentleman to a beautiful woman. It was her.
Now you can hear the expression without any parts missing. You can add from 1 to 5 seconds to the right, and you can do the same for any parts to the left of the recording, so at the beginning of the recording. In most cases, you probably will not need to use these controls because the expression that you found would not be at the beginning or end of the text. So even if the alignment is not perfect, it doesn't really matter. But in cases like this one, you obviously should use these controls. Now, if you want to find out some details about a given fragment, just click it. A new window will open and you will be able to find out some things about the author of the book, about the novel itself, so the title, the chapter, then some details about the reader, the name, the gender, the dialect, then some characteristics of the text itself I'm going to talk about in a moment, and finally you can also find out details about where the fragment was found in the source file, because obviously you can download the file itself from LibriVox.org and locate it yourself. Okay, now let's look at the filtering options here. You can filter the results according to narrator and dialogue. I guess this may be important in many cases because the reader's voice characteristics are different in these two contexts. Maybe let's try the word beautiful without anything following it because there will be more examples. Okay. And now let's narrow down our search only to narrator. If you do that, we'll get only fragments which were taken from narration. And you can do the same with dialogue. And now you can see only the results which concern dialogues. Now the next filtering option is function. What the word function refers to in this case is the pragmatic function. Let me give you a quick summary of this. Well, according to many authors, grammatical forms are prototypically associated with categories of meaning. These associations happen to be altered, so for example, declaratives may actually express questions rather than statements in some cases. But anyway, the function section refers here to the categories of meaning, these categories, not the grammatical forms. The automatic categorization was made on the basis of the English punctuation conventions for the English language. So, for example, if a given text ends with the question mark, it is a question. even if its grammatical form is declarative. Well, this is what the question mark tells the reader. Let's try choosing questions only now. So let's go back to our example. And let's choose questions only. And now you can see only examples which concern this particular context. The rest of these filtering options are rather obvious. You can narrow down your search according to the reader's gender, then the reader's dialect. Well, I have to warn you that even though the categories I used are very broad, unfortunately, you may encounter some mistakes here. I am a phonetician and I know a few things about the dialectology of the English language, but I cannot call myself an expert in this particular field. And you see, there were cases in which a given reader sounded literally like 100% British at the beginning of an ebook. So I classified him or her as coming from Britain. But later, when I heard him reading a part in the middle of the book, he turned out to be Australian, he or she, actually. So if you come across a mistake like this, you can send me an email, and that would actually be very helpful, and I would appreciate a help of this kind. And finally, if you are an expert yourself in the field of English dialectology, you may also contact me, and, well, we could cooperate and possibly together develop this project into something better than it is now. And you can narrow your search also to the author's gender here. The last thing I'd like to talk about is associated with the so-called wildcards. And if you don't have experience with using language corpora, you may wonder, what are wildcards? Well, wildcards are these special symbols that you may use to find some patterns in a given corpus. For example, a common wildcard representing one character is usually the question mark. So let's try something like this. So let me zoom in. The letter M followed by the question mark followed by N. And press search. This returns, well, actually the search is narrowed down to question, but that's fine. This returns man, men, and some other less frequent examples. Obviously, if you click on the word man, you will get the word man itself. So the question mark stands for one character. Another wildcard which is popular is the asterisk, which actually represents one or more characters. So let's try this time M followed by the asterisk followed by N. And you have many more examples. 99 types were found, and this time it's well, you have the words man and men, but you also have words in which there are more letters than one in between M and N. I have also added two more wildcards, which are meant to give the user more flexibility in finding sound patterns. Well, the spelling and pronunciation are rather two different and mostly separate entities in modern English, but you can still use spelling conventions to look for some specific sound combinations. And the first special wildcard I introduced is this, equals V. This equals V stands for any vowel letter. I'm saying this in inverted commas. Obviously, there is nothing like vowel letter in English, but this stands for any of these letters which typically represent vowels or are parts of vowels. There will be exceptions, obviously, like the letter Y may also be used to represent the approximant Y, as in yes. But anyway, let's try our example. So once again, okay, let's try this one. Now you only have examples. Well, there are some letters in between and the last letter but one is typically the letter which is pronounced as vowel or symbolized as part of a vowel sound. Another special wildcard I introduced is equals C. This stands for any consonant letter. And when you go to the documentation, this is any of these letters. And again, there will be exceptions like were may also be used to represent diphthongs, as in how. But anyway, let's try finding this. Now, as you see, there are letters in between M and N, and this time the last but one letter is actually the letter which typically represent consonants. Okay, and I believe this system, although imperfect, could be quite useful. Let me give you an example. Recently I was doing research on the articulation of homorganic affricates in English. According to claims put forward in a few publications, affricates have to be fully released even if they are followed by a homorganic affricate. And this is a bit surprising because English is generally very permissive in occlusive articulation reductions. And additionally, in some other languages, like my own native language, which in general is quite restrictive in the phonetic reduction of occlusive articulations, we have gemination of neighboring homorganic affricates. But in English, this is supposed to be impossible. Because I was curious about this problem, I performed an analysis of such examples, and this is the way I did it. You can see the combination of segments. These are not all the combinations I investigated, but this is just an example. And the way I was looking for them in the corpus. So you can see that this ch and ch sequence was found by looking for words which ended in ch and followed by other words beginning with ch. And the combination j was found using these combinations. So I guess the system of these wildcards could be useful for finding specific sound combinations. Finally, maybe let me show you something interesting. The corpus so far doesn't have part of speech tagging. I may add it in the future, but for now it just doesn't have part of speech tagging. You could, however, use something what linguists specializing in corpus linguistics call lexical templates. Let's say you want a list of adjectives pre-modifying the word woman. You cannot do it by using any special tag for adjectives, but you can do this. Remember that the asterisk replaces one or more letters. Well, in isolation, this means one orthographic word, actually. So let's try asterisk woman. This should give you a list of all words followed by woman. And at the top, you will see examples of function words, obviously. But further down the list, you actually encounter mostly adjectives. This is because adjectives typically pre-modify nouns, and you can use this or similar lexical templates to perform some basic part-of-speech searches. Part-of-speech is meant to be in inverted commas, obviously, here. But you see, you have the indefinite article and the definite article, and the next two are actually adjectives already. And the further down you go, the more adjective examples you will find. Okay, that's everything I wanted to tell you in this recording. If you would like to contact me about anything connected with this corpus, you can use this email address here. I hope this video was useful. Have a nice day. Bye-bye.